Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be doing a full coverage over gear. What it was, how it evolved, hopefully make it a little bit shorter, what it is now, and how to properly obtain and use it. Gear was once the main progression in For Honor's characters. Having a good gear loadout often meant you were overpowered, for good reason, because stats were used to sacrifice some areas for others, and oftentimes uh, uh, revenge or sprint speed was increased to make fighting one or two people extremely in your favor or running away almost too easy. There was even a throw distance stat that was extremely powerful with Warlord and Shigoki. Some of these stats eventually were removed or even or nerfed or even removed, and as some of you may well know, and over time it became extremely difficult to balance builds that the community had created while still keeping some progression in the game. And so the devs came up with a new system with similar but entirely controllable as well perks. Now, for those that are new to For Honor or simply are new to the recent versions or updates, perks are minor additions you can add to your character to give it a slight assistance in the overall fight without impacting too much on gameplay. This system was put into place to ensure skill and careful use of feats were the end result of a fight or a match instead of whoever had the best gear stats, which I completely understand, and I actually was in full favor of this system being added, unlike some people. And so, what are these perks and how will they affect you? Well, let's go through all of them and discuss their effectiveness as well as what they do. So to do that, you simply open the character menu and go into your gear section, and depending on what console you're on or system, it can be different things, such as pressing down left analog stick or pressing F4 on mouse and keyboard, or same thing for PS4, I would assume. So first, let's go over all the offensive perks, because you can just immediately go into the overall perk system simply from one character's menu. Don't know why they don't have a general one. Actually, they do. Never mind. So for the offensive perks, you have a few basic ones, but then again, they're also very useful. Devourer, which most characters will have as a default common. Uh, Upon execution, you will heal an additional 15 health, which is basically a minor bounty hunter, but it's only if you execute. This is to replace the uh, execution health regen stat to a set amount, so you never really gain too much or too little from this. It can be very good, but I only recommend it for modes where like you have to execute people, which can often end up being really good in Breach for that little bit of health you always get, especially added on to really long executions. You can almost heal yourself up entirely with this. And Bounty Hunter. Don't forget Bounty Hunter. That plus this equals major health gains. Um, Next up, we have Endurance. When gaining a Renown level, receive 3% stamina cost reduction, and this will stack up to 4 times because you have 4 levels of feats, 4 levels of Renown, for a max of 12% stamina cost reduction, which is very good for stamina intensive characters such as Shinobi, Gladiator, Shaolin, and the like. Headhunter. Honestly, a little bit lackluster of a perk for each unique player or bot hero. Heroes meaning the characters themselves. So anyone on the character roster that you can play, not officers, not commanders, no guardians, for the heroes specifically. For each individual one you execute, you will gain plus 4 health, up to a max total of 4 people, up to a max total of 16 health because you executed 4 individual heroes on the enemy team. So in order to take max effect, you have to execute every single person on the enemy team. Very unlikely to ever happen, and I don't know why that's such an extreme condition for such a weak perk, but Bulk Up is a better alternative to that, which I will get to later on. Crush them. Upon hero kill, your next attack deals 20% more damage. Very useful. If you're going on a killing spree, you will always have a very nice damage buff. Now, here's the thing. This only works if the attack lands. I've tested this. If your attack gets blocked or dodged, or whiffed or something, the 20% damage does not apply to that. So block damage, it doesn't count. So if I were to deal a 30 damage heavy, 20% of that would be an extra 6 damage added onto that, so it would deal 36 instead. However, this mostly can tell the effectiveness during a heavy attack, because say for instance you do a light attack, which probably does 20 damage at most, you're going to get 4 extra damage, so it will equal 24 damage, which is about as much as a Valk Heavy, which isn't very all that powerful. But that's if you land a light first on your first attack, though it does give you a nice little bump in damage, so take that as you will. As 6 damage isn't that much either, but can be life or death in this situation in the game. Gale Storm. Upon a hero kill, gain 20% movement speed for 10 seconds. This one is a bit confusing. This can often be a common or rare perk for most characters. This perk basically means as soon as you kill someone, you can immediately just rush off and do whatever. Not really a common scenario, but at the same time, it's something and can often... I could see Peacekeeper using this more than anything, but at the same time, it can also be used to run away from fights as soon as you kill someone, which can be useful in some situations, but supersonic or hypersonic would probably be more beneficial, but I do not judge if you use this perk for that reason. Early Reaper. Upon spawn or when revived, first attack deals 20% more damage. Now, I've noticed on Centurion in particular, you can combine Early Reaper and Crush them. I don't know if it stacks in particular, but if you were to have both perks on, you could effectively always get that 20% damage buff in as you are constantly playing any game. Granted, his heavies only deal 25 damage, unless of course he does it unblockable, but that still is a decent constant buff that he's getting, because he will always be getting kills and always being revived and always spawning in. Early Reaper will and Crush them combined could probably be a very powerful combination to have. And not to mention, people constantly being revived and spawning in Breach can often mean Early Reaper is a very good addition. I've noticed on Peacekeeper it can be pretty annoying. Moving on. Survival Instinct. Winning critical health, gain 50% stamina cost reduction. I don't see... Okay, so there are a few perks in here that have critical health prerequisites. So this basically means you have to have 1 bar of health for this perk to take effect. And I don't see how much stamina is going to help you when you're in critical health. However, someone did bring up a very fair point to me. Popping Revenge in critical health could actually be one of the major use cases of these perks. But then again, I don't see how stamina cost reduction would work well in that situation, because you have effectively infinite stamina. However, it is good if you have the extra shield that comes after Revenge, which is a different perk, which we will be getting to soon. So, not a very powerful perk, but at the same time, when combined with other feats and or perks, it can be somewhat useful in situations. So, defense perks. Let's start off with shields up as well. Upon spawn or when revived, receive a 15 health shield, which seems pretty decent, especially considering protected revive becoming a major thing in Breach all of a sudden. And a 15 health shield's a pretty decent amount for what it's worth. Can be very useful for keeping you alive in those few seconds you are revived. So, yeah. And it's a pretty easy to obtain perk as well, so it's not that big of a deal. Last Stand. When in critical health, gain 20% damage resistance. This is what I was talking about. 20% damage resistance when you're already at 1 bar of health does not seem all that well unless you are in Revenge, which I had mentioned. 20% damage resistance while you have Revenge in while you're at critical health. So if you were to pop Revenge while you have 1 bar of health, and this perk takes effect, you will effectively take 20% less damage. so keeping your armor alive more and thus keeping you alive more. So can be useful, but that's a pretty tight timing to get for that perk. Can be life or death. Very useful, but also at the same time, very hard to pull off. Aegis. All shields received are increased by 20%. That seems to be very strong. With Protected Revive, as I had mentioned, and Phalanx also being a thing. As well as you can also combine these with other shield perks, such as Shields Up, Vengeful Barrier, and the like. Very good to have, especially with combination in feats and other perks. Bastion. When in a zone or carrying a banner offering gain 10% damage resistance. This is mostly good for heavies. I'm telling you why, because whenever you take 10% less damage, this also applies to the minions, this also applies to feats, and can often be very useful when combining the feat Conqueror, which allows you to capture zones faster. And even with, um, what was it? What was the one that allows you to? Oh, apparently that's an assist perk. Never mind. Combined with other perks, this can actually be very useful as well in helping you capture stuff fast. There's a perk that allows you to capture stuff faster. We'll get to that shortly. So 10% damage resistance can be very useful while you're capturing and protecting a zone. So that's actually pretty useful for heavies, but I don't know about this isn't available for most assassins, so I'm not that worried about that. Vengeful Barrier. When exiting Revenge, gain a 25 health shield, which is what I mentioned. Last Stand would probably be useful with this, as well as Survival Instinct. So combined with Vengeful Barrier can actually keep you alive for a decent amount of time while you use Survival Instinct. And so the two combining could probably be very useful. However, that combination is only available for select characters, so keep that in mind as well. Bulk Up. This is what I had mentioned was a better alternative to Headhunter. When getting a renown level, increase maximum health by 4 for a max of 4 increases. So instead of executing every individual hero, all you have to do is get your feats, and you will gain 4 more health. I don't see why this was the only option instead of Headhunter. Headhunter seems like a very far out perk that seems very difficult to actually activate properly. So Bulk Up would be a very good recommendation instead of Headhunter, which I don't even like. I thought I was going to like it, but then I saw the prerequisite and I don't like it. So, Fresh Focus. This is actually one of the good ones, and for those of you that had stamina builds, this is going to be your favorite. When out of stamina, blocks and parries regenerate 20% stamina. So as soon as you get out of stamina, the second you block 4 attacks, you are almost the second you block 5 attacks, you are already full stamina again. This perk is extremely useful for the equivalent of out of stamina recovery builds. In fact, actually for my Kensei, which had a 100% stamina exhaustion recovery build, which again doesn't help why they removed gear stats in the first place. I was lucky enough to get Fresh Focus randomized in my whenever they did the conversion, so I have Fresh Focus for my Kensei, which is pretty accurate to what my build was before. So for those of you that like stamina builds, Fresh Focused. However, you have to get lucky in what your character has. As you can see, my Shinobi isn't lucky enough to actually have Fresh Focus, unfortunately. Or Bulk Up. Instead, I have Headhunter, which no one likes. Now, assist perks. These actually are smaller perks that overall help allies and you, but at the same time, not as major impacts as offensive and defensive. Remedy. Upon a hero kill, gain 10 health. This is another common perk that you'll see very often that can very easily be combined with Devourer to gain a total of a full bar of health extra whenever you execute and kill someone. So combine 25 health on top of that execution you're already doing, and you'll have a lot of health. Sometimes even combine that with Bounty Hunter itself, and you can gain a lot of health back very quickly. Supersonic, the perk I mentioned before as well. In Revenge, gain 15% movement speed and uninterruptible sprint. This is basically used for assassins that are typically finding themselves in a gank where they cannot die or get executed under any circumstance. Attackers for breach, of course. In this situation, Supersonic could be will activate automatically whenever you pop Revenge, and you take off like a freaking bullet, and you're out of there safe and sound because you were uninterruptible while you were sprinting, and you also sprinted faster because of Supersonic. Useful, but at the same time, I like to stand and fight, which really isn't the best idea. But recently I've been running away more in Breach because of I want to keep my respawn tickets as much as possible, so I might move over to Supersonic later, which some of you will even spot. Clever tactics. Capture a zone and use banner offerings 15% faster. Combine this with Bastion, you have a monster. And enough said. Radiant Rebound. Upon spawn or when revived, gain 20% movement speed for 10 seconds. This basically means as soon as you're respawn from getting killed by someone, you can immediately take off to your next point of interest without any basically lack of speed. Very useful. Feline Agility, a very similar perk. When gaining a renown level, gain 4% movement speed for the first renown level you get, and then for the next 3 levels you get, gain an extra 2%. So it'd be 4%, then 6%, then 8%, then 10%. So for a total of 10% movement speed. Not bad. My friend, I recommended this perk to when he was playing Zhang Zheng. Once he got all 4 feats and that 10% movement speed actually fully activated, he was actually noticing a reasonable difference in speed. In fact, he could actually almost go as fast as my Shaolin sprinting at full speed. So Feline Agility can be pretty effective in picking up your character's pace, as well as when you're carrying offerings and you're slowed down. This Feline Agility could often make up for that decreased speed, proving effective. Rapid Refresh. Upon takedown or when reviving an ally, feats active cooldowns are reduced by 5%. 5%. So if you have Speed Revive on your character and you're often reviving your teammates, this can actually be very useful, especially when you have powerful feats. Now, let's move on to Rising Dawn. I actually love this perk. I love this perk because I have this for my Lawbringer with Protected Revive, and this proves to be extremely powerful. Revive allies to 75% health. Now, ever since they nerfed revives to 50% health, this seems like a very, very powerful perk. Now, for those of you that don't know what I keep talking about, Protected Revive, well, there's a feat that Tiandi and Lawbringer have called Protected Revive. So basically, as they're reviving, they have full hyper armor. Oh, my bad. As they're reviving, they have full hyper armor in their revive, and they can't be interrupted out of it unless a bash hits them or they get guard broken. So that, and once they do revive your ally, they will have the ally in question will have a 50% health shield, and that is actually I don't even know what it is. It's like a 60 health shield, and that basically will also be taking effect within Rising Dawn. And so you'll have 75% health while being revived, and you'll have that 60 health shield. So you'll be pretty effective in those situations. Now, as you can see, there are a wide variety to choose from in terms of perks. However, you can only choose what perks you want based on rarity. And for that reason, a chart will be shown on screen to demonstrate what perks you can attain with what rarity the item is. Now, this can be a bit confusing, so you can pause the video right now if you want. Okay. So, I'll also try to have a link down to a spreadsheet with that exact same chart that I took that from in the description below. This will also be, that was also in my perks video as well, as some of you may know. Now, the maximum amount of perks you can have at once is 3, as the chart has demonstrated. But you can also choose 2 very strong perks if that is your end goal. And to demonstrate this, the very strong perk limit is basically from epic. No, it's from, what is that? That's you have rare, then uncommon, I guess. All the way up to legendary, and these basically count as the top 3 perks. So I can choose clever tactics and crush them, but I cannot have clever tactics, crush them, and devour, for instance, or clever tactics, headhunter, and devour. I cannot have all 3 of those. I can only choose clever tactics, endurance, and remedy, or in my case, crush them, endurance, and devour, because thankfully the rare perk counts outside of the top 3, and therefore I can select the common. A bit confusing, but you'll learn to get used to it, trust me. Now, for a long time, many people that could easily rep up characters decided that it was best to wait until you were rep 7 or 8 to decide what gear you really care about for your character. This no longer applies with perks, as you can easily decide what perks you want at the moment, then change them to better suit your needs later on, as perks have set values. And since they have set values, that means you have no advantage to when you upgrade or don't upgrade the gear. So you even start off with the default perk on your character to help get you started. What you notice right here for Shinobi would have been Devour. So, what is the best way to obtain your gear for the perks you want? Surprisingly, it's the hard way. Since you have so many options for perk combinations, it can take a very long time before you get the exact combination you want. And for this reason, using salvaging gear option is extremely ineffective. So it would be more beneficial to simply grind the gear and get lucky rather than waste countless amounts of steel. The only time I would recommend salvaging gear for the perk system is the opposite situation. Salvage gear at the common rarity to unlock the 2 basic perks you are comfortable with until you reach higher rarities. To show an example, okay, I didn't mean to do that. To show an example, I'm going to salvage gear for 2 types of characters. I'm going to salvage gear for Shinobi, and I'm going to salvage gear for Nushia, because I have her at rep. I might salvage it. Yeah, I'm going to salvage it for Nushia, because I have her at common gear. She's the only one I have at common. So, if I go to salvage gear, and then choose the premium pack, yes, I'll spend 1,000 steel just for the sake of the video. You heard it here, folks. Now, as you see in this combination, I have several different combinations of perks, and there's no clear winner here on what I would like. And for this reason, it can seem very difficult to get that exact combination I wanted. So salvaging gear in this case would have been extremely unfortunate for me, as I just wasted 500 steel that I plan to anywhere through this video. Now let's say I move over to Nushia. I just wanted to main Nushia out of the open, and I don't have any gear for her, and I press tab again because I'm an idiot. So I want to see what perks I can start her off with until I can get her to a better area. So let's look at her perks here. For her common, we can see Galestorm, Devourer, and Early Reaper. Okay, so I don't like Galestorm, as I somewhat made clear, so I want Devourer and Early Reaper. What would be the best way to do that? Well, let's just show an example of where I use scavenging gear and then I use 500 steel. Now let's look. Now obviously this is a very bad example, but at the same time it's also not. So as you see here, I have only 3 options for available perks to me. For this reason, I have a higher chance of getting the perks I wanted. So let's say I actually, for some God knows what reason, actually wanted Galestorm. Well, I obviously have a very high likelihood of getting Galestorm. And you even have the chance of sometimes getting 1 perk alone in a gear piece. So I could very easily choose Galestorm and Early Reaper based on this loadout, and I could even salvage again. You know what, just for the sake of video, I'll salvage again. I'll spend 1,500 steel. You know, why not? Jeez, wow, this likes Galestorm. Um, and so I have very clear options choosing Galestorm with whatever other perk I want. So yeah, you have a tighter hold on what perks you can choose when you're at lower reps, and so you have more control over what you can salvage during that time period. So how do you set up the perks properly as well as better understand the system? Well, once you reach higher rarities and have more perks available to you, it can be very difficult to understand when and if you can get the perk combination you should be able to have. For this reason, I would recommend this strategy. Open a different loadout than your main one, or simply one that doesn't have the gear you use for modes where it's relevant, such as uh, duels, like if you have a dual loadout for some reason, even though perks aren't available in duel. Select the gear that you have obtained in the combination you think looks mostly correct. You don't have to exactly know. So let's say I am wanting to give my current loadout for a different one, where like currently I have Endurance and Remedy. Let's say I want to sacrifice that Endurance and Remedy for Devourer and Supersonic. Well, I would open a separate loadout other than my main one, and I would start selecting gear that looks mostly correct, such as this one. By the way, I kind of somewhat prepared, but I didn't actually grind this gear in advance, so I just picked which ones I mostly thought looked correct. So in this one, you'll notice. Well, there's no exact combination of Devourer and Supersonic, so I just picked one where I might need Supersonic more. So in this case, it was this one. So, and let's see. Well, there's one with Devourer and Supersonic right here as well. And there's another one with Devourer and Supersonic. And then there's another one with Devourer and Supersonic. I'm getting fortunate in that area. And then there's there's just one with Devourer and Remedy. Now, as you can see here, I have Supersonic activated, but I do not have Devourer activated. What you want to pay attention to is this yellow bar as well, because notice how like when I equip this, the yellow bar barely reaches Devour, but doesn't quite reach there. But at the same time, when I select this, when I select that gear piece, you'll see how the yellow bar kind of reaches there and circles it, but at the same time, that perk isn't activated. And you'll notice that the points are actually lower than what it takes to activate it. This means if I upgrade that gear, I can actually activate this perk. So, to demonstrate this, the most effective way to do this is to slowly activate it. So I already have Supersonic activated, so I don't have to put in any steel to activate that perk. So what I want to do is I want to go into the lowest level gear, and then I want to click Upgrade Devour. This will typically upgrade it 20 points. Now that's about 150 steel, so let's move over here where this would cost a cheaper amount of steel. And you'll notice what I'm doing is I'm upgrading as I go. I'm not actually upgrading it all at once. This is to conserve steel because you don't always want to spend as much steel as you have, but instead want to spend only as much as you have to. And so you might not even end up upgrading your gear 2 or 3 times. So this one costs 135 steel. Let's upgrade that one more time. And I don't have to upgrade this gear piece because it doesn't have Devour. And I can upgrade this. And then since we're past the 150 steel mark, I can start upgrading gear backwards again. And then we go back here and spend 150 steel. And then go back here and spend another 150 steel. And would you look at that? We have the perk activated and we didn't even have to upgrade it an extra 3 or 4 times. And so what we have done is we have conserved steel at the same time as being just as effective. As, again, if I were just upgrade those extra parts, it would have no effect. So now you have saved steel and activated the perks you're choosing. what's there to lose? This is an extremely effective strategy. And then what you can do is, you can simply, since you can tell which loadout you have selected that gear piece in, simply go back to your main loadout and select a gear and customize it again to what you, such as change the look to whatever you want. Beautiful strategy. Beautiful. I recommend it to everyone that plans to use perks very effectively. Now, dumb question, but at the same time, it's a very reasonable question. What are the diamonds above your gear? Now, this is refinable gear. This is a way of upgrading the past the limit of the gear. So, thing to note is some gear will spawn with 2 refined diamonds and some will spawn with 4. This is basically to replace single and double refinable gear. There is no single or triple refinable gear. This kind of replaced both of them. And so, say you have a perk you want to activate, but you just came up short of what you need in order to activate it. This is where refined gear comes in. It can just help you barely push over the limit and activate that perk. Now, the thing to note is refining gear, refining the perks only grants you 10 points, whereas if you upgrade the level of that perk, you gain 20 points. So, to demonstrate again, let's say upgrade Supersonic, you see how it would go up to 685 instead of where it is now, 665. Whereas if I go over to Shinobi, where I have a refinable perk ready at the moment, you'll notice how if I go to refine that gear piece, see like revive here, it goes from 660 to 670. Seriously, 670. I mean, just 10 points for 325 steel. So that pretty much puts it in perspective. Yes, refining is not worth it. However, if you were very close to that perk activation, you have the option to shell out a little bit extra steel to activate that perk. So that is all I have for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope this helped some of you, as that is all I have. And if you guys did like this video, please make sure to leave a like. And if you want to leave some feedback, please make sure to leave a comment. And if you want to see more videos from me, please hit that subscribe button. And I'll see all you dudes in the next one. Bye!